Good morning and welcome to all. I'm George Frampton, a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Global Energy Center. The program this morning and one we had last week have been inspired by an international memorandum of understanding initiated at Glasgow last winter among governments and companies to work toward 100% sales of zero-emission medium and heavy-duty trucks by 2040, an MOU that has now 16 countries and more than 50 companies signed on. So last week, we focused on technology and workforce issues. Can truck manufacturers actually meet these goals? The answer in a nutshell, I think, was yes, we sure can. We can do it, but we need a market that demands them and a charging infrastructure that's very different from the one for electric cars. So today we're focusing on what government will have to do to meet this ambitious goal, supporting manufacturers, creating markets, and making sure that the infrastructure exists. The California organization CALSTART has been working on these issues for years. California is a leader. CALSTART's played a lead role in crystallizing the MOU, so we're fortunate to have with us this morning to moderate this very interesting program, Cristiano Fasagna, CALSTART's director of commercial Drive to Zero program. He's been deeply involved in these issues for more than a decade. Quick reminders before we get started. You can follow us on Twitter at AC Global Energy. Use the hashtag AC Energy. And second, we encourage you to submit questions through the Q&A function. If you're on Zoom, Cristiano will try to get to as many as we can. Unfortunately, if you're on YouTube, we can't take questions. So thank you all for joining us. Now, Cristiano, thank you for being here today to moderate, and take it away.
Thank you, George, very much for the invitation to moderate this important discussion. So medium and heavy-duty vehicles are often not emphasized enough, even though we know that it's increasingly changing. And then despite being a relatively small share of the on-road fleet, they represent a disproportionate share of global greenhouse gas emissions from the on-road sector, and they produce the vast majority of on-road nitrogen oxides that can impact air pollution and cause adverse health effects, in particular to frontline communities that live near the freight corridors and freight facilities. So recognizing the importance of these vehicle segments and the increased technical and economic viability of zero-emission technologies, as George was saying, 16 leading countries signed this global agreement really to align on a common ambition towards 100% new medium and heavy-duty vehicles being zero emissions by 2040. This is the first time that leading nations have ever aligned on such an ambition and are really setting a essentially target for many other nations to follow, like as well. And then to support this ambition, adequate policy is really vital to the expansion of zero-emission medium and heavy-duty vehicles. And when we're talking about policy, we're talking about regulations, we're talking about incentives, we're talking about infrastructure investments, innovative business models. And it's really with them together that we're going to be able to transform this market. So during this panel, very happy to bring together government leaders across governments in Europe and the United States, really to collaborate and accelerate the market transformation towards zero-emission medium and heavy-duty vehicles, gather further momentum worldwide towards this global MOU ambition, and then really serve as partners, like with industry stakeholders to advance the development. So it is my absolute pleasure to introduce this amazing panel. We have Leanne Randolph, who is the chair of the California Air Resources Board. We also have Sonia Munich. She's the International Coordinator of Sustainable Logistics with the Netherlands Enterprise Agency. Michael Berby, who is the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Sustainable Transportation at the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy at the US Department of Energy. We have Marcus Bluer, who is the head of vehicle regulations at the Federal Roads Office in Switzerland. and Dan Dorner, who is the head of the Secretariat with the Clean Energy Ministerial. So to all of you, thank you very much for your participation in today's panel. So we're starting the the moderated discussion for people at the in the audience. If you already have questions, please feel free to submit them in the Q&A. So, Chair Randolph, I'm starting with you. And so California has been a leader in zero-emission vehicles, and right now is the only jurisdiction to have implemented a comprehensive policy approach for zero-emission medium and heavy-duty vehicles, including ambitious targets, strong regulations, and time-bound incentives. If you could discuss here the driving forces behind California's commitment to zero-emission medium and heavy-duty vehicles, and what are the policy pillars that you see that will eventually deliver on this commitment? So if you could, talk to us like maybe 3 to 5 minutes here, that would be excellent. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for having me. I guess I'll start with kind of a moment of inspiration, which is just a few weeks ago, I attended the largest zero-emission truck showcase ever held in the United States, which we co-hosted with our colleagues at CALSTART. And the vehicles on display ranged from delivery vans to Class 8 big trucks, and they were just proof positive that truck manufacturers have the ability to produce great products that meet the needs of fleets and deliver air quality benefits to communities, as you mentioned, that are the ones most impacted by internal combustion goods movement, trucks, delivery vans, et cetera. So California has really been a proud partner with the private sector and other governments, working hand in hand to accomplish amazing things and to really make progress in cleaning our air. And so we've done that with a suite of strategies, right? Starting from a very clear set of targets. In 2020, Governor Newsom set clear targets for decarbonization of the transport sector, including 100% zero-emission vehicle sales by 2035 and 100% zero-emission trucks on California's roads by 2045 or sooner, and 100% zero-emission off-road equipment. And that builds on decades of work by the state of California in ensuring that we are regulating internal combustion engines so that they are as clean as possible. And so now we are moving away from internal combustion and into clean zero-emission vehicles. And our advanced clean trucks regulation which set manufacturers on a path toward zero-emission vehicles, coupled with our upcoming advanced clean fleets regulation that we'll be considering later this year. That set of regulations will really transform the commercial and freight trucking population. Advanced clean trucks will put about 300,000 zero-emission trucks on California's roads by 2035 and deliver those substantial health and economic benefits. And so this strong manufacturer mandate will bring trucks to our communities, and the advanced clean fleets regulation will ensure that fleet owners have a requirement to purchase these trucks and transition their fleets over time. And those two twin strategies will put an end to internal combustion engines on the road in California. In addition to that, the governor and the legislature have committed to unprecedented investments in infrastructure to support this transition. Specifically, $10 billion over 5 years for both zero-emission vehicles and the critical charging infrastructure. $10 billion is real money. So we are absolutely getting serious about providing the support for those fleets and operators who need to purchase the vehicles, incentivizing the deployment of drayage trucks and transit buses, taking dirty diesel school buses off the road, funding for port and cargo electrification, and over $1 billion in infrastructure investments that will support the charging for both zero-emission electric vehicles and hydrogen vehicles. And we've joined with 15 other states and the District of Columbia in a memorandum of understanding to work together towards making 100% of truck and bus sales electric by 2050. And of those MOU partners, 5 other states have already adopted the Advanced Clean Trucks regulation. And so that means that 20% of the US market will require that growing percentage of medium and heavy duty trucks sold to be zero emission. And actions taken by our federal partners will hopefully support and complement this work as well. And I'm sure we're going to have a lot of talk this morning about our international cooperation as well.
Thank you so much, Chair Randolph. I think it's truly like outstanding how comprehensive the California policy approach has been with targets, with regulations, with incentives, and it's really the combination of these three that moved the market. And very exciting about the truck showcase, like as well. And I think like as much as the models are available, the technology is ready for the vast majority of applications, but very often there are many policymakers that have never seen the technology, for a zero-emission truck, like live. And I think that these opportunities to show policymakers that technology is real are extremely important, like as well. So thank you very much. I'm going to go across the Atlantic now with a question to Sonia. So the Netherlands also has a very comprehensive policy approach for including like zero-emission areas for commercial vehicles in 30 to 40 of your largest cities by 2025. It's the only nation that has had like this level of ambition for zero-emission areas. And then also the Netherlands has a very key role in convening the group of 60 nations who committed to this full transition. Right. So, Sonia, could you tell me a little bit about the key policy components that the Netherlands is planning to meet these targets for zero-emission medium and heavy-duty vehicles, and what is the rationale for the Netherlands to have assumed this leadership role, like internationally?
Yes, thank you, Cristiano, and thank you, George, also for inviting me, and very pleasure to be here. I also had to think about the electric vehicle symposium where I was 2 weeks ago, because I noticed that there's a lot of energy on heavy duty vehicles now. So all the discussions were going about trucks and how to do this transition. And all the companies, governments, everyone was asking themselves, how should we do this? So I think it's a very important discussion that we have today. And thank you for the question. Well, for the Netherlands, our goals are in the National Climate Agreement that we concluded in 2019. And for sustainable mobility, we state there that by 2050, we want our entire fleet to be zero emission. And next to reaching 100% new vehicle sales of passenger cars by 2030, we also want our public transport to be zero emission by then. And by 2025 already, all new buses coming into operation should be zero emission. And at the moment, about 25% of our buses are already zero emission, which is the public transportation buses. And as you already mentioned, Cristiano, indeed, we have a goal for zero emission zones by 2025 in the 30 to 40 largest cities. This is also part of the climate agreement. And currently, already 27 cities have announced the boundaries of these zones, together with Schiphol Airport. And more will follow, I'm sure of that. And maybe one thing to mention here is that the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management, they took the initiative of coordinating this nationally and harmonizing all the rules. Of course, working together closely with municipalities and with industry. But if you don't do that, you end up with 30 different zones with all different rules, which is a nightmare for companies, of course. So that's kind of the stick. that we have, because then after 2025, you're not able to enter the inner city zones with no zero emission vehicles. But we also have a carrot, because still battery electric and hydrogen vehicles are more expensive than the diesel versions. And we have purchase subsidies available for vans, but also for trucks and also for construction machinery or off-road mobile machinery, I think is more maybe the English term. And they are still more expensive, so some help is needed for companies to overcome this barrier. And a thing of success, I think, is that the first day we published the subsidy for trucks and for construction machinery, it was immediately oversubscribed. So that shows that at least companies do want to make this transition. And I'm very happy to say that our minister last week announced some extra budgets. So most of the requests for subsidy can now be honored. So I think we'll be having a large growth of zero emission trucks in the coming years. And in the European context, of course, the CO2 standards are very important. And then also, of course, charging infrastructure is very important, because we need to do something there. In the Netherlands, we developed a multi-annual, multi-stakeholder charging infrastructure agenda, which goes for all modalities and all speeds of charging. And we also have a focus there on logistics, of course, also maritime applications, but we have a working party on logistics with different task groups on all the different niches within logistics to make sure with all the relevant persons how to tackle this issue. And well, that's kind of the key policy components. But now I come to the second part of your question, Cristiano, because I think it's very clear that this is a giant transition that we have to go through. And as you undoubtedly are aware, the Netherlands is a very small country, so we cannot do this by ourselves. We need the international community to come together here and join forces. And that is also why last year we co-initiated this global memorandum of understanding together with CALSTART, of course. And we have also made capacity available within the ministry to support this forum that we have now. And we sincerely hope that more countries will follow and also will sign this MOU, and hope to get also the support of some other leading nations, such as the United States, for example. So that's in a nutshell, I think.
That sounds good, Sonia. I think it's been so great to partner so closely with the Netherlands in coordinating this international agreement. And then really to see, the comprehensive policy package that the Netherlands has implemented already, and in its planning to implement in a similar fashion that California has done as well. So I'm going to go back and across the Atlantic back to the US and get a question to Michael Berby. So Michael, very exciting to have you here with us. And then, so last year, the Biden administration, set this really ambitious target for 50% of new passenger cars and trucks being zero emissions by 2030. And then, so if you could tell us a bit about the, what US has, planned in terms of targets and policies for the zero emission medium and heavy duty sector, as well. It's I think Chair Randolph, talked about the North America multi-state MOU, and so if you could tell me a little bit more about what the direction that the U.S. is planning to go.
Thank you, Cristiano, and so happy to be here with this group, with our great colleague, Chairman Randolph, over at the Air Resources Board as well. Let me just take maybe a second to zoom out just a little bit on the overall question. We at the Department of Energy, working very closely with our colleagues at the Environmental Protection Agency and the U.S. Department of Transportation, are completely focused on achieving an overall net zero emissions from the transportation sector. Overall, the entire transportation. How do we decarbonize all of the transportation sector? And that is our singular focus across all the different modes. As you recognize at the beginning, Cristiano, tremendous progress, right, on light duty vehicles is happening, which is great. But we have now been turning our attention for a while to the the heavier duty sector, which is not just on-road, medium, and heavy duty, but also the non-road sector, which is actually as big as aviation. We have strategies we're developing for aviation, for maritime, for rail, for all the pieces. But the medium and heavy duty on-road and the non-road sector combined is a prime focus for our work. We believe that to get there, right, we need to have several things happen simultaneously that we are working on. The technology itself and driving the cost down is a huge piece. I just spent the day, I'm here on the West Coast as well, Leanne, and spent the day looking at some electric trucks up here in Portland, working with Diamond Truck, is one company, but working across the industry. We launched the Super Truck program earlier this year with the goal working with 5 teams cutting across almost all of the medium and heavy duty makers to develop zero emissions, both medium duty and heavy duty trucks that meet the cost objectives, that you can get to be cost effective, and the durability. That's focused a combination of both battery electric and hydrogen. We believe that we are going to need both technologies. We recently published a significant report that was published up to the White House looking at when we can get there. And our data shows that for the medium duty vehicles, by 2030, we can largely be at zero emissions. And for heavy duty vehicles that are short haul, battery electric has a significant opportunity by 2030 to 2035, but we absolutely will need hydrogen as well. So from a policy perspective, of course, this past year, for those that are outside of the US, they don't know, the bipartisan infrastructure law was passed that contains literally hundreds of billions of dollars in work across the range of transportation to work towards net zero. There's significant effort on transferring the entire school bus fleet, or large parts of the school bus fleet, the transit bus fleet, and deploying the charging infrastructure. So we believe that the funds will be there to help move that part of the market. We are working aggressively on developing the technology to drive the cost down. 2 specific things, we are launching a major effort, $6 billion to develop the battery supply chain that will be needed for the batteries for these vehicles. And it's important to note for the heavy duty trucks, it probably is a different chemistry that will ideally be needed than the light duty vehicles to both meet the durability and the number of recharging cycles you need. So that will be important, but also $8 billion on hydrogen to develop hydrogen hubs across the country to actually prove out the production, the use, the transportation, the storage of hydrogen through an entire comprehensive ecosystem. So these efforts will be big investments that will help us get there. But the second key thing that has to happen as a big focus for us is the fueling infrastructure, and thinking especially about the charging infrastructure. So we announced plans, we issued a notice of intent for a funding opportunity to start laying out refueling corridors. California and the Energy Commission, I think, has recently put a grant out to do this in California. We would like to do that across the US and several other corridors to get refueling corridors from, think about a port, inland port, maritime port, out to these large depots, and actually deploy that recharging infrastructure, working with utilities, managing all of the types of loads you need, doing the planning for that. So we think that is the next big hurdle that we have to start addressing. And really the last part is working with the fleets on the operating patterns, because these are going to be a different approach. I think we believe that it absolutely can be done, but there's a lot of learning to be done over the next 4 or 5 years before we then see that we can really scale up starting 2025 and after. We think that the vehicles, the demand, all those pieces will be there. We need to work over the next 3-4 years to make that, to get ready.
No, thank you so much, Michael. Really great to have you here. I particularly like you made really important comments here, like starting with the non-road sector. If we think that sometimes medium and heavy duty vehicles are invisible, right? That is changing. Non-road is even more, right? And then as we tackle like this, this sector for medium and heavy duty vehicles, like we really need to tackle non-road like as well, especially because some of the technologies, the zero emission technologies, they're used for medium and heavy duty vehicles, they can easily be transferred to the non-road sector like as well. So there are a lot of synergies. Like here, also great to think in terms of how US is being thinking like long-term in terms of funding for vehicle technology development, battery supply chains and infrastructure. And also like great to see what you said about the total cost of ownership, and then how for really the vast majority of truck applications, we can already expect cost parity, before 2030, and then like between 2030 and 35, like as well, which is really consistent with what we're seeing from a lot of other studies like around the world. So thank you, like Michael here, for being with us. We're going to go back to Europe now. Like welcome Markus Buller from Switzerland. So so Switzerland is one of the 16 nations who signed the global MOU, and it's really committed to a full transition to zero-emission medium and heavy-duty vehicles by 2040. So, Markus, if you could tell us a little bit about the policies that you currently have in place, and then the policies that still need to be adopted, to meet that level of ambition, that would be, great. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Cristiano. When I hear what California and the Netherlands have done already, I must say I'm a bit jealous. We have the same ambition, but we're a few steps behind so far. I would like to start with the points we're still lacking, or obviously lacking. And first, there's two strategies which are where the work is underway. One is a hydrogen strategy. So far, we don't have one, and the Federal Council has recently spoken out in favor of a strategic orientation for the future role of hydrogen in the Swiss energy system. And I think that's the basis for future policies in that direction. The second one is we don't have a strategy for a nationwide network of charging stations for trucks. So far, there has been a strong focus on passenger cars in Switzerland, and that shift is just about to begin. That we're also having a look at heavy-duty vehicles. The third one, there are no reduction targets for CO2 emissions for heavy-duty vehicles in Switzerland. We had a vote last year on the Swiss CO2 Act, and we wanted to adopt the targets from the European Union. That would have meant a reduction by 30% from 2020 to 2030. It was voted down, and we're in the process of drafting the successor law to the CO2 Act, and we hope to get it through the next time. We still have some policies that are already in place and some that work well. The biggest and most important one in Switzerland is the exemption from the heavy duty vehicle tax, or a fee. That's a fee that applies to all vehicles with more than 2.5 tons, and it's calculated on the numbers of kilometers driven on Swiss territory, the permitted weight of the vehicle, and the vehicle emissions. And for vehicles with electric drives, they are currently exempt from that fee, and the savings can be a high 5-digit number per year. So that's a financial support we can give, and was one of the main reasons that Hyundai delivered their first 10 fuel cell trucks, X-Scion, to Switzerland in 2020.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Then we put in place last year subsidy programs for hydrogen vehicles. There's a hydrogen mobility program, which promotes the use of heavy-duty vehicles that run on green hydrogen. It's aimed at transportation companies. The H2 buses program is something similar, aimed at public transport operators and tourist traffic areas. We pay there around $50,000 per vehicle as a subsidy. And the last one, as you surely know, zero-emission drive systems are often heavier than combustion engines. As of April this year, the Federal Council decided to increase the maximum permissible weight on zero-emission heavy-duty vehicles and vehicle combinations. by the additional weight of the zero emission technology. So if you have a 2-ton battery, you can add that weight to the full weight of the vehicle. But yeah, we have a lot of work ahead of us, and we hope to, through the good collaboration of the MOU, to get some insights on what works well and which ways we should follow.
No, I think, Marcus, you touched upon like such an important point here, that none of the countries that currently signed the global MOU have it all figured out, right? And then part of it is exactly on how we can work together to establish the best pathway, you know, to actually meet like that level of ambition. So, but I mean, what you said about the exemption, you know, from the on-road tax, I mean, that is really critical, because that really helps accelerate the cost parity. Like here, it's like many other countries, you know, Norway being like one of them, have you know, adopted like a similar like strategy here, and I think it's a really important tool like in the policy toolkit that governments could apply. So thank you very much for like all of the insights and support right here. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dan Dorner with the Clean Energy Ministerial. For those of you who don't know, they are a high-level forum to advance clean energy deployment. They convene energy ministers from 28 member countries and the European Commission, and that together account for 90% of global clean energy investments and over 75% of global GHGs. Like, so we're also, they have, you know, quite a few campaigns like in different sectors. And, you know, and then CALSTART through our Drive to Zero program and campaign, no, this one, no, here with the logo, is a campaign of the Clean Energy Ministerial. So Dan, very happy and excited to be here. So if you could tell us a bit about the role of the Clean Energy Ministerial to accelerate zero-emission medium and heavy-duty vehicles, and what you have planned for your upcoming annual meeting in Pittsburgh in September this year. That would be great. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure. Thanks, Cristiano. So, as you've already touched on, we're really about accelerating clean energy deployment, and let me explain why. The International Energy Agency has already shown that effective international collaboration, the simple or sometimes not so simple act of working together to achieve our clean energy goals, is the difference between achieving net zero emissions by 2050 or achieving net zero emissions somewhere closer to 2090. So simply making sure that we don't all reinvent the wheel when it comes to zero emissions transportation will be the difference between hitting our targets or missing them by miles, or more appropriately, by decades. And we all know that this decade is critical, the 2020s, and we're already halfway through 2022. And as Secretary Granholm is keen to say, deploy, 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 because there really is no time to waste. And that's why the Clean Energy Ministerial exists, to enable countries, companies, expert actors from all around the world, across all different sectors, to work together to solve the problems, create the solutions we need to achieve our clean energy goals. And also in this instance, you know, plugging clean energy into the commercial vehicle sector, we also have to plug it into the overall energy system that is transitioning to net zero emissions at the same time. So we have to think about the grid, power system flexibility, possibly clean hydrogen, as Michael touched on, sustainable biofuels. Those biofuels may even go into other sectors. We've talked about other parts of the transport sector. And we in the Clean Energy Ministerial, we work across that whole space. We're looking to move us all along more quickly to the benefit of each and for the good of all. And let's not forget, actually, it's just shown very recently in the Department of Energy's Energy and Employment Report, you know, there are big jobs in this, and the number of jobs are growing fast, and that is true and borne out internationally as well. But specifically going back to road transport, we have work streams. We have the electric vehicle initiative, and especially in this space, we're very proud to be the host of the global Drive to Zero work stream on commercial vehicles, which is brilliantly coordinated by you, Cristiano, and our friends at CALSTART. We're really honored to have, to be the international home for Drive to Zero and to help drive forward progress with the Netherlands and others on the global MOU. Because many countries, cities, companies, people all around the world are already taking steps for transformation in their commercial fleets and vehicles, and some, like some of our speakers today, are really leading the way, and I commend them for that. And our work streams, they look to bring a combination of things to help accelerate that progress. Could be data, analysis, policy and regulatory advice, coordination and collaboration between different actors, learning and doing, setting goals, solving problems, sharing those solutions, and at the end of the day, absolutely hitting those targets. As just a couple of recent examples, our global EV outlook, published just a few weeks ago, includes trends in electric heavy-duty vehicles and also has a data explorer for people to use. Global Drive to Zero has a great array of tools which you've been responsible for, Cristiano. So I particularly like the progress dashboard, but also the policies and actions toolkit, the technology inventory, all really useful for people who want to know what's going on in this space. And in addition, an excellent program of international dialogues and thematic deep dives to help people coordinate and collaborate and work together. Obviously, I shouldn't say too much because nobody can talk about it more powerfully and expertly than you can, Cristiano, but it's all really great work. But more broadly, it's really about recognizing that international collaboration ensures that clean energy transitions are faster, cheaper, and more effective for everyone, turning those individual goals into collective goals and into concrete actions, showing the market, showing all of the actors in that market how serious we are, how fast we want to go. And in addition, we in the Clean Energy Ministry look to elevate the importance of these issues, put them on the highest stage, be it through launching the global MOU at COP26 with ministers and a wide array of global energy leaders in attendance, to what is for us the next crucial moment. In the great city of Pittsburgh, we'll be holding the Global Clean Energy Action Forum from the 21st to the 23rd of September, hosted by the US Department of Energy in partnership with Carnegie Mellon and other local partners. This is going to incorporate the next Clean Energy Ministerial meeting, the next Mission Innovation Ministerial meeting, and much, much more. In essence, we bring together our massive international clean energy community to deliver what we think and hope will be the clean energy meeting in the second half of this year. If you want a comparator, it's like the clean energy equivalent of COP for those who are familiar with COP, the Clean Energy Davos for those who are more familiar with the Davos Business Forum, but really about bringing together thought leaders, decision makers, and action takers. And that's really what I know Secretary Granholm wants to see. She wants to see action across the clean energy spectrum, but in particular in this instance, deployment and commitments to deploy zero-emission buses and trucks as quickly as we possibly can. So we'll bring the ministers, the CEOs, the policymakers, the manufacturers and more to Pittsburgh. We want everyone to be there, knowing that there's no actual price of admission, but if there were, the price of admission would be the level of your ambition. And actually, just conveniently, the registration for this forum opens today. So if you actually want to be there and be part of that forum, go online, search Global Clean Energy Action Forum, and quite literally register today. Thanks, Cristiano.
That I am so excited now. If I wasn't enough, and no, it's been great to get the support from the Clean Energy Ministerial as a forum, really of leading countries, leading the transformation to complete clean energy. So it's been like a great partnership, like here. And really great to see the amazing partnership, like here between the Clean Energy Ministerial, the U.S. Department of Energy, hosting the Global Clean Energy Action Forum. I'll see if I have the time to actually look for it and put it in the chat here, so to make everybody's life easier. But so I would like to ask the other panelists, is there anything that some of the other panelists have said that struck a note with you that you would like to make a few comments before I continue our set of questions to all the panelists, just like having a brief moment. If you have like a burning comment to something that somebody said and that they would like to address, this is the time to do so.
Cristiano, I would just like to pick up on just the last comment by Dan. Action, action, action. I know upfront a lot of discussion about, what are the regulations, what are the policies we can do, and while those are important, if we truly want to transform to get to 100% zero-emission vehicles, right? We are going to need to have. We can't just dictate it by policy alone. We are going to have the economy, the technology, the charging, the fleet customers, all of the ecosystem essentially pulling along that way. So I think on behalf of my boss, Secretary Granholm, I certainly invite people to the Clean Energy Ministerial meeting here and the Action Forum. And again, the goal here is connect people together. I just really encourage those who are listening, seek out those partners. Seek out those people. There's tons of funding that is now available to make these moves in many different ways, in many different pockets. But we need now the people on the ground to take those first steps, take the experiments, do the pieces that will lead to the next piece, to the next, and ultimately get us there. So we are very positive and bullish that we can get there, but it will take a collective effort. It can't be done by governments alone by any stretch.
Maybe one, if I may, Cristiano, one small addition, because I think it's, I really like the sales pitch being done here for SEM and all the things happening there. But I think it's also great what Michael was saying, because we are organizing some side events at the Clean Energy Ministerial, which will be both for high level and also for working group people, working level people. So I think it will be great to participate there.
No, that sounds good. And then so it's really going to be like a really great event, like combining, both the dialogues, like across governments, between governments and industry, but also mixing that with real technology showcases, like as well. So that's really going to combine, the talk with the walk, like there. I also have a good question here for for all of the panelists. Like really, when we think in terms of the full transition to zero-emission, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles, what is blocking our path? And what are the most important policies, and actions to clear that path? So I'll see if anybody would like to address that question.
Well, I can sort of mention a few things in the short term. I think we have some challenges in terms of getting the supply of vehicles out there. I mean, we've seen a lot of product from the manufacturers and a lot of interest from the buyers, but it has been challenging, getting those assembly lines going. And so we are hopeful that the clear goals and the clear regulatory steps that nations and subnational entities are taking really jumpstarts those assembly lines and really gets the supply out there of the zero emission vehicles. And then coupled with that infrastructure, those infrastructure investments as well. In California, we have kind of a unique challenge because we are both adapting to the difficult impacts of climate change at the same time trying to mitigate climate change. And so a lot of our utilities are struggling to get this infrastructure interconnected and deployed because they're also hardening their infrastructure against wildfire and the severe drought impacts we have here in California. So making that transition expeditiously, getting the infrastructure out there is also a challenge. And so I think we just need to continue to make the investments, continue to send the market signals, continue to really work with manufacturers to get their products out to the fleets and the companies and the individual drivers who need that zero emission technology.
Absolutely.
Cristiano, one other critical barrier we have to recognize is the cost, right? So in the Build Back Better law, we had the administration proposed a significant tax incentive for these vehicles. If that passes, that will help tremendously. But the largest vehicles, right, today, the cost just is too high, especially for smaller mid-sized fleets. We believe that cost will come down over the next 5 or 6 years through technology and really the battery improvements. But driving that cost down it's still work. It's got to happen. It's got to be a lot of effort to drive the cost down over the next 5, 6 years. And then I would agree with the infrastructure. Infrastructure for these vehicles will take 3 to 4 years to put in place, oftentimes to get the electricity, build the power, do all the things you have to do, behind the meter storage, local solar in some cases, all those things. So that planning has to start very early before the vehicles show up.
True, I really support what you and Chair Randolph are saying. But I think another thing also, which is now very prominent in the Netherlands, is the fact that our grid is full, so to say. In many places, we have no place for more grid connections, which is a real challenge if you look at the high power chargers that need to be installed. And we really are looking into creative options already, like sharing grid connections from different companies who have different operating times and using the same grid connection. So that's a real challenge, I think. And also, if you look at all the lead times for putting down these heavy cables that high power chargers need. So that's, I think, also a real challenge that we have to not have yet found the solution to, but thinking about it.
Exactly. So anything like Marcus, Dan, that you would like to to complement here? There's actually one question from from the audience that is really relevant and and then important for this discussion. So I'm just going to introduce it here, just to get the juices flowing, which is also related to challenges, but more specifically, right? So one is like this issue of the additional demand on the power grid, like from medium and heavy duty vehicles, and what we can do about it. And then another one that I hear quite often that I think is a true concern is the issue of the where we're getting the minerals, right? Since these batteries are going to consume more minerals, how are we doing in terms of the supply chain of minerals to ensure that those are feasible, and that the minerals are extracted in a just and equitable way without environmental impacts, and how we can think through that. So if any of the panelists have some insights on the specific challenges as well.
Yeah, I can start briefly. I think this is a really important issue. And, one of the things we've been thinking about in California is how we can do more of that work here in California, particularly around lithium and trying to develop lithium extraction technologies and projects here in California so that we can do it with our rigorous environmental standards, and also thinking about the end of life and ensuring that these batteries go into the hands of companies who can recycle them in a safe, effective way and reuse some of these materials. So this is very much an active conversation that I think we are all really trying to understand the best steps to recognize that, we want to ensure that we aren't creating more problems in terms of the materials than is necessary. So it's absolutely a topic of discussion.
Yep. Last year, Cristiano, we issued a comprehensive blueprint on the battery and battery supply chain, laying out what would be needed, and are implementing that. So, as I mentioned earlier, the $6 billion that we are spending out to develop that domestic supply chain, new processes, new ways for the minerals, but also there is significant amount of work at the Department of Energy developing the next generation of batteries that's to use much, much less critical minerals. That will be a second piece. And then on the recycling, part of the core cost strategy and the mineral resource strategy is actually to recover the minerals from used batteries. Now we have to get enough of those batteries out there to be able to recover them. But eventually we believe 40% of the raw supply chain will come from those recycled batteries. It will be important first to address the stream of the batteries and to make sure they're not waste, but also it's a key part of the cost structure that is far cheaper to get the minerals from that have already been processed out of the battery than to dig it up out of the ground and then process and refine it and put it into a new battery. So it needs to be a whole ecosystem. And this is an important global point. We have been having discussions with the EU, of course, the EU and the US of how do we approach this collectively? How do we think about that battery supply chain? When you think a lot of these batteries are going to come from light-duty vehicles, those light-duty vehicles at the end of their life, many of them leave Europe and leave North America and go to other parts of the world. How do you then recover those batteries in those waste streams? So it's going to take a global effort, we believe, to really think about that full life cycle.
No, absolutely. I think this is such a key point, like here, just really to think in terms of the circularity elements of this and the opportunities that they can arise, and also the fact that I do think that the supply chain issue for minerals, it's like that is real, but it needs to be taken in context with how those supply chains, especially for oil and gas, happen today, right? So there, so I think that this is critical. I mean, we have strong supply issues today, right? I think it's important to address the future supply issues that we have today, but it's important to also think in terms of how things are going to change and what the baseline that we have today is. Any other comments on this? Yeah.
Cristiano, I would mind. So just a couple of quick points from me. Firstly, I mean, I think on the broad issue about kind of challenges that still need to be overcome, I think actually what I tend to be quite surprised by when talking with a lot of our community over the last few months is when you get into it, there seem to be fewer challenges than people realize. I think actually people are quite surprised that a number of the challenges either already have been or are in the process of being overcome. I mean, the one simple example that you kind of gave is, when people really see these things and see these vehicles and realize that they're not on the drawing board, they exist. The production lines need to scale up and other things, but already people realize that this thing is happening. We're just trying to make it go faster. That would be point one. But also point two is that it's not necessarily happening in all parts of the world at the same pace. And often we see internationally, this is a wave. There are kind of leaders and there are relative laggards, and then there's this kind of big lump in the middle. And so it's going to be a global wave that we see. I think the next point I'd say is been touched on already, which is very much the intersectoral connections and coordination. We certainly see across our clean energy community much more intersectoral engagement happening, often with the power sector work streams, the grid work streams, the regulators there, to try and figure out, that's often at the heart of the transition that we're looking to make happen, and to make sure that that happens robustly. And if you're lucky enough to be in a country where your grid and your power sector is already exceptionally reliable, you don't want to lose that reliability. But if you're in a country where that reliability is not great today, then the idea of putting big additional load on there is often quite nerve-wracking. But then also, just my last point is, and kind of been touched on a bit already, around the issue around critical minerals. I think supply, there's a lot happening to boost supply now. There's a lot happening to build the recycling industry now. And also there's a huge amount going on in the innovation space, as Michael's touched on, to reduce our reliance on these minerals in the first place. So I think actually, I feel more reassured than I probably did a few years ago that at least there's a lot of action taking place to deal with the potential risk that could come about through supply. I'll stop there. Thanks.
No, that sounds good. There's so just a very final comment here, because when I hear all these challenges, what I do not hear is technology readiness, right? And this is something that has changed dramatically from 3 years ago. 3 years ago, the first challenge that we would hear is technology readiness. Oh, this would never work, right? So we're past that. Like when we talk about supply chain, mineral supply chains, when we talk about infrastructure, when we talk about cost, those are all real. But the fact that the technology is ready is, we're past that. There is a very important question like here. So when we think of first mover countries, such as those who are here today, like US, Netherlands, Switzerland, how do we envision the process of working together with emerging and developing countries? Like really where much of the industrial and the emissions growth is projected in coming decades. So how can we ensure that the actions like across like US and Europe also enable like all of the progress and the benefits that will come with it, to also benefit stakeholders and communities in emerging and developing countries?
Well, if I look at the global MOU, we are now very actively trying to get middle and low income countries to sign, to join the MOU forum, to sign the global MOU. And thus they can join the collaborative forum, so we can share all the insights. That we are also still investigating the way, but at least we can share our lessons learned. And I think it's also for them a way to give them possibilities to actively engage with financial institutions and with some funding platforms, as they are also in this international community. And another thing I think which is also quite important is that we make sure that all our old vehicles, all our old diesels will not end up in these countries, which is also, I think, an action we should take action on that.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much, Sonia, for like this excellent remarks. Couldn't agree with you more. We have another minute here before I have to wrap up, like, unfortunately. So if anybody has like additional insights on this very important question.
Maybe
I just wanted to say very briefly from our part, sorry, Marcus, the Clean Energy Ministerial may have kind of 29 members, but it's a very inclusive forum. So we have a lot of other countries, including across Africa, Latin America, Asia, that are participating in all different parts of our work program. So from our perspective, the door is open. And we certainly see at the minute on the light duty side, a lot of those countries are active in our work programs on the light duty side. So it would seem to be a natural progression that they also come in and start to participate in the medium and heavy duty as well. Thanks.
Yeah.
And I think this is an area where international cooperation is so important. And, California is co-chairing the Transportation Decarbonization Alliance as well, which really also brings together a lot of these countries and subnationals and industry. And so continuing the dialogue, sharing information and coordinating closely is how we're going to make progress and get to these goals that we've all set.
Absolutely. No, yeah, it's very, very good comment, Chair Randolph. And then I'm going to give the final word to Marcus as well.
Thanks. I just wanted to follow up on Sonia, because just this spring, the United Nations has started a task force on setting efficiency requirements for cars who are going to Africa or to low income countries, and maybe that would be an approach for heavy duty vehicles as well.
Absolutely. No, thank you for all the remarks. Like, unfortunately, our time is coming to a close. I would like to thank everybody in the audience for tuning in, and especially to our panelists for the very engaging discussion. And I'll also like to thank the Atlantic Council Global Energy Center, my colleagues at CALSTART's Drive to Zero program for their assistance, and also really thank the team, who is behind the event to put this together, including Maya Sparkman, Celine Kumbarasi, Lizzie Bowen, and Lara Macedo. So this presentation is available on the Atlantic Council website, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. So please share it with your colleagues. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for joining us today and for your insightful questions. Thank you very much.